Hey, what's up guys, Marco of Mac Motions. Today we're comparing 5 different lights. Those are the Aputure 120d, 120t, the Camera Variable15 345, and as well as the Yongnuo light stick. And lastly, the KMTV Boltzen bicolor 55 watt LEDs. They are all my favorite because they are cost efficient, they are decent color quality, and they all fit in my bag for the most part. So let's jump over to the footage I just shot last night. I shot it real simple on a white wall here in my bedroom. I adjusted the camera's color temperature to see what was a white balance point and to see where they landed in comparison to each other. So let me know what you think. Alright guys, so first up is the Yongnuo WN360, or the light stick as I like to call it. But first I want to call attention to the camera settings on the top right, which is f2.8 ISO 200 at 50th of a second. Now the light is pretty dim and it's set to the daylight LEDs only, which are actually registering at 4900 Kelvin. So in order to get full brightness out of this light, you have to turn on the tungsten ones as well. So it's more of a mixed thing. And here is where you have both the LED lights on, full power, which gives you an equivalent of about 4000 Kelvin. And what I did here is transition to a white balance. I did this in post, but in camera, you'll obviously do it when you record, just to show how bright this is. So moving forward, here is the Boltzen LED. And actually what I'm doing here is shooting it through an umbrella, which makes the light super soft and really great for a key. That's why it doesn't seem as bright as the light stick. So this is actually a good thing. If I took off the umbrella, this light would be much brighter. It would be very spotty. I already know that part. That's why I'm not even gonna bother looking at it right now. If I'm gonna be taking one light with me in a bag and it's this light, I gotta know how it's gonna react with an umbrella on and how bright it's gonna be. The light stick I actually wouldn't use with the modifier. It's not that bright. So this is a good thing right now. Moving forward, some of the findings I saw was that I set the light to 5600 Kelvin all the way to the right dial on the color mode, but my camera actually registered at 5100 Kelvin, which is what you're seeing right now. And that's what most of these LEDs show all the time, or what they represent when the manufacturers somehow, for some reason, they always advertise 5600 Kelvin or even 6000 Kelvin, but they're always off by maybe 400 Kelvin. So for most of these lights, their daylight version is actually going to be reading somewhere around 5000 Kelvin, which is actually good. Moving right along, here's the Brightcast Variable15 345, again shot through the umbrella, still at f2.8, and the camera white balance is now at 4900 Kelvin, even though I was at the 5600 Kelvin mode all the way to the right, daylight LEDs only. I love this light. This is probably my go-to light. I've made a review about this light. You should check it out. This is a very lightweight, portable, and versatile light. It's bicolor. The daylight mode of it is not as good as the tungsten mode, but it is very bright. So you can't complain about that. Lightweight, you can set it up really quick. I actually have the defuse softbox for it, so it gives me a little bit better spread. And that brings me to the only gripe I have about the light, is that you can't really modify it that easily. The mount does not have an umbrella bracket on it, anything like that, so it is not the easiest light to modify, even though it is a great light. And moving along to the famous Aputure 120 series, this is the 120D with the umbrella. This light is easy to modify because it has an umbrella bracket, has a Bowens mount, and it's very sturdy. It'll hold a lot of weight. I actually use a softbox for this. I really love it. So as you can see, it is very bright. It also registers at 4900 Kelvin, around there. And the only gripe I have about this one is that it's a 3-part component system. The power unit and the control module, as well as the light, they're all separate. I wish it was maybe a 2-component setup to make things a little bit more faster when you're doing things out in the field. And here's all 4 of these lights when we put them side by side. They are all, again, in daylight mode, and as you see, the light stick was the least brightest. It was the dimmest with no umbrella, even though I would never use this with an umbrella to begin with because it already has a long shape. It's very portable. It's just not that kind of light. Not even to mention the RGB feature that it has on the back, but we won't go into that right now. What we can say about all of these is they all have very adequate color quality. They all sort of lean to a yellow tint because all LEDs really lack that blue channel when it comes to the daylight modes especially. So that'll conclude this first portion of the comparison where we actually looked at daylight color, we looked at their brightness comparison to all 4 lights, and we also looked at diffusion. Now I'm actually going to look at the chip on board LEDs only, which means it's the Boltzen versus the Aputure. And here I actually have 2 Boltzen LEDs, and note that my camera settings have changed to f4 because things have gotten a lot brighter. This is the bare light, this is 2 Boltzen LEDs at the same time, and I did this to see how it compares to 120D. But before that, note that I set the light mode all the way to 3200 Kelvin, which is what the dial read, even though I have actually set my camera to 2900 Kelvin. So, you know, there's also a little bit difference here in what you're actually getting from what the manufacturer says. Now, here is a single Aputure 120d. This light has very, very accurate color, and it is obviously very bright when you don't modify it. Another obvious thing to note is that this light has a very, very wide spread. It is not as spotty, just like the Boltzen LEDs, but of course that's another obvious thing from the Boltzen is that it's more of a Fresnel style type of light, which is why I got it. So it's just interesting to see them compared. Having now put these both side to side, it's kind of interesting to know that 2 Boltzens will almost be close to the power of one 120D or 120T from Aputure, which means that maybe if I wanted to take one or the other, I would probably take 2 Boltzen LEDs with me on a job, which would be more versatile work. If I wanted a key, I can stack those 2 together and use them as a key, or if it was a darker situation, I can use one as a key, one as an accent. Whereas the Aputure, it is one light, but it is a very bright light. And actually, if you're going to be doing anything in the daylight, these Boltzens will not really stack up. If you're diffusing them, you're going to need the 120D at least. Even looking at their new 300D, that would be way better, but that's a little bit out of this price bracket of lights that we're looking at right now. So all in all, I bought the Boltzen LED lights to complement my Aputure 120D, which is very good. That's why I bought the Boltzen bicolor LEDs, because I knew they weren't going to be as bright, even though I didn't need them to be. I'm going to be using these primarily to be accent lights, to be used bare in their Fresnel modes. However, looking at these results, I'm curious to find how well their daylight only version Boltzen works out, or even maybe their, I believe it's a 60 watts, which is slightly bigger, has a bigger fan. It's actually a quite bigger unit. I like the compact size of these Boltzen 55 watts. So I'm interested to see how well the daylight or the tungsten version only light will compare to the 120D. So there you have it. Let me know which one was your favorite light, which one had the best color quality. Personally, one of my favorite standouts is still the Yongnuo light stick. While it has actually probably the least accurate color, it still is very close to the other ones, but it has RGB, it's portable, and it's not the softest light itself, and it's kind of hard to diffuse. However, just the nature of it being a long shape, it's going to be soft whether you put it horizontally or perpendicularly. So in itself, it's very easy to pack in a bag and just have with you at any moment. Having said that, my new Boltzen bicolor LEDs that I just purchased are going to be very, very helpful. I still have a lot of testing to do with them. They're going to serve me very good for those high-end interview situations where I really need to have the picture quality look really stellar. And those are going to help me with a lot of accent lighting or lighting the background, things of that nature. Possibly even in a dark situation, I'll be able to mount a softbox onto the Bowens mount of the LED and use it as a key. Though that'll probably be in a very dark situation. I may even invest in a daylight only version for the 55 watt. It is very small, it's portable, it's quiet, the fan is quiet, and it packs a lot of punch for the spot angle that it has. So those were just some of my opinions, of course. Let me know what you guys thought about the comparison. Which light was the best one? What lights do you guys own, and what lights would you like to see compared? Until then, my name is Marco of Mac Motions. I'll see you guys in the next time. Peace.